Can fatty liver actually be reversed? In part 1, we talked about what fatty liver is and why it's become so common. In this video, we're going to talk more about what you can do to improve or even reverse a fatty liver based on what the current evidence tells us. This includes diet, exercise, weight loss, medications in some cases, and we'll also spend some more time on alcohol as well. We're not talking about trends, detoxes. I'm not going to try to sell you some miracle liver cleanse. And honestly, some of the claims I see in social media ads these days would make any physician cringe. We'll stick to what the evidence actually says. No gimmicks, no BS. Fatty liver is not a primary liver problem. It's a metabolic overflow problem. When the body is taking in more energy or calories than it needs, fat gets redirected to different parts of the body. When you have insulin resistance, this process is compounded. One of the places that fat gets stored in is your liver. And if you haven't checked out part 1 on fatty liver yet, it explains why this happens in more detail. Many of the things that reliably improve fatty liver tend to reduce energy overload, or improve insulin sensitivity, or they might increase the body's capacity to handle fuel or calories. There is no single fatty liver diet. What does consistently improve liver fat is reducing the metabolic burden placed on the liver. Key principles behind this include the following. Number 1, quantity of calories. How much you eat matters. Ultimately, you need to burn more calories than you consume in order to lose weight. Number 2, quality of calories. What you eat matters as well. Refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and liquid calories are major drivers of liver fat, and you can usually find all of these in ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods consist mostly of cheap industrial sources of dietary energy and nutrients, plus additives. Think highly refined sugars like high fructose corn syrup, oils, chemical preservatives, and more. These foods are quite literally engineered by scientists hired by corporations whose entire business model depends on you not being able to stop eating, which leaves you craving more, eating more, and taking way longer than normal to feel full. Let's take a closer look. Ultra-processed foods tend to be low in fiber. As a result, they get absorbed and stored very quickly. They tend to be high in refined carbohydrates, which leads to insulin spikes. And remember, insulin makes it easier for your body to store fat. Ultra-processed foods also tend to be high in fats, which often tend to be the unhealthy type of fats. High in saturated fats, which can increase the risk of high cholesterol as well as cardiovascular disease. These foods tend to be high in calories and high in salt or sodium, which helps you to crave more and eat more of these things. Number 3, protein intake matters. Adequate protein improves satiety or feeling of fullness and preserves lean mass. The recommended daily intake of protein varies based on age and other factors. The traditional recommendation for adults aged 19 to 64 is a minimum of 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day of protein. For those who are pregnant, more muscular, or actively working on building lean muscle mass, protein requirements may be higher. The recommendation for older adults, which are people who are 65 or older, is at least 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight per day of protein. It's important to note that in certain medical conditions, it's actually advised to limit protein intake, or even focus on a plant-heavy diet. Suffice to say that individuals can vary, so remember, this isn't medical advice tailored specifically to you. It's important to ask your doctor about how this applies to you individually. Number 4, fiber intake matters. Fiber-rich, minimally processed foods improve satiety and reduce insulin spikes. Foods that are low or absent in fiber tend to get absorbed by your body more quickly, leaving you hungry again before you know it. We also know that low fiber diets not only lead to constipation, and don't worry, this is a safe space, it's okay to talk about poop, but they're also associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and colorectal cancer. Number 5. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. It's still important to get carbohydrates in your meals. However, the type of carbohydrate matters more than the presence of carbohydrates. Many people try to cut out carbohydrates entirely. Some people do see improvements, but let's be honest, sweet, delicious carbs usually wins sooner or later. A more sustainable goal for many would involve minimizing simple or refined carbohydrates as much as possible and replacing them with more complex carbohydrates instead. So instead of things like soda, candy, pastries, juice, cereals, white bread or rice or pastas, think things like oatmeal, multigrain or veggie-based breads, rice and pastas, legumes, nuts and seeds, fruits, and vegetables. The goal isn't all or nothing or dietary purity. The goal should be better day-to-day choices, which leads to metabolic relief. Those small day-to-day choices add up over time and can make a big difference. Another strategy that often comes up in discussions about fatty liver is time-restricted eating, also known as intermittent fasting. It's not just a trend. That low-fiber diets not only studies that show it can be an effective tool. This is a safe space. Randomized controlled trials demonstrate that time-restricted eating can effectively reduce liver fat, body weight, waist circumference, and body fat mass in those with MASLD. However, there is a lot of conflicting information on the internet about how long to fast for. By limiting the daily eating window, many people naturally reduce overall caloric intake, improve insulin sensitivity, and give their liver longer periods without incoming fuel. From a physiological standpoint, that matters. When insulin levels are lower for longer stretches of time, the liver has more opportunity to reduce stored fat and shift towards fat oxidation or fat burning mode. That said, time-restricted eating is not mandatory for improving fatty liver. It's a tool, not a requirement. Some people find it very helpful and easy to maintain, others don't. If time-restricted eating works for you, a practical approach often involves a consistent overnight fast. By avoiding late-night eating and/or delaying breakfast, you can extend this fast gradually. Your eating window should fit your lifestyle and should not be pushed to the extreme or pushed to the point of starvation. For many people, a 12 to 16-hour overnight fast can be beneficial and sustainable. However, fasting more than 16 hours per day on a regular basis can increase the risk of nutritional deficiencies, hypoglycemia, can negatively impact your sleep cycle or circadian rhythm, and in some, it can lead to muscle loss along with fat loss. And if you are on certain medications, particularly diabetic medications like insulin or sulfonylureas, fasting beyond 12 hours is usually not recommended as these medications can increase the risk of hypoglycemia. What matters most when considering time-restricted eating is whether or not the approach helps to reduce total caloric intake, helps to improve metabolic health, and is something that you can sustain in the long term. If it does, it can be a useful addition. If it doesn't, fatty liver can still improve through other approaches. You don't need dramatic weight loss to meaningfully improve fatty liver. We know from studies that losing at least 3 to 5% total body weight can improve liver fat, and losing at least 7% total body weight can improve inflammation. We know from studies that look at actual liver cells under a microscope that higher degrees of weight loss, depending on your starting weight, can provide even more benefit and improvement. Progress is dose dependent, not all or nothing. Plateaus are normal, and the benefits often continue despite them. In fact, we also know from studies that healthier nutrition and regular exercise can improve multiple cardiometabolic conditions independent of weight loss. This includes improvements in insulin sensitivity, glucose levels, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, general cardiovascular fitness, and quality of life over time. While we see the most benefit in terms of liver health when weight reduction is achieved, there are some studies that show it is possible to reduce liver fat even if you don't lose weight. More specifically, these studies look at people who switch to a Mediterranean-style diet, which generally tends to involve minimizing processed foods and high-sugar foods, while increasing healthy unsaturated fats, fiber, and lean protein. These findings are interesting because it suggests that both quality and quantity of calories consumed matter. So even if the scale isn't moving as fast as you'd like, remember that you are still making some high-quality investments into your long-term health by eating well and exercising regularly. When it comes to exercise, guidelines recommend a minimum of 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, but more is better. Essentially, the sky's the limit. Now, what is moderate intensity exercise? Some common examples of moderate intensity exercise include brisk walking, playing volleyball, raking the yard, ballroom dancing, or light cycling. Another way to gauge whether or not your exercise is reaching a moderate intensity is the talk test. During moderate intensity exercise, you should be able to speak in a full sentence, but you should have a hard time if you tried to sing. Contrast this to high or vigorous intensity exercise, where it's usually difficult to speak more than a few words without pausing for a breath. Resistance or weight training exercises can reduce liver fat through multiple mechanisms that work together. During and after exercise, muscles dramatically increase their glucose uptake, up to 50-fold during exercise. This reduces the amount of glucose available for conversion to fat in the liver. Resistance or weight training exercises can increase whole body lipid oxidation, meaning the body shifts towards burning fat for energy rather than storing it. Resistance or weight training exercises can improve insulin sensitivity, or in other words, they reduce insulin resistance. And again, insulin resistance is a key driver of fatty liver, and high baseline levels of insulin also promote fat storage. Resistance or weight training exercise has a direct effect on liver metabolism by improving mitochondrial function, which enhances the liver's ability to burn fat rather than store it. Resistance or weight training exercises can reduce hepatic fat synthesis. Gene expression studies show that resistance training decreases expression of lipogenesis or fat-making genes in the liver, while increasing expression of fatty acid oxidation or fat-burning genes. Resistance or weight training exercises also help to build lean muscle mass. Aside from the metabolic health benefits of this, I tell my patients, and honestly myself as well, to think of resistance training as an investment into your future independence and quality of life. We lose muscle as we get older. As we lose muscle with age, it can get more difficult to perform basic daily activities that we take for granted. For example, going for a walk, playing with children or grandchildren, even changing your own clothes can become challenging. Regular exercise is crucial to prevent this. In Part 1, we reviewed the guideline recommendations for alcohol intake. We also reviewed what counts as a single serving of alcohol and what counts as moderate alcohol consumption. I know some of you are thinking, great, this is the part where the doctor tells me to stop drinking forever, but don't worry, having fatty liver doesn't automatically mean zero alcohol forever. Alcohol guidance is about risk, not judgment. The level of risk involved depends on different factors, including amount of alcohol, frequency of drinking, pattern of alcohol use, i.e. binge drinking, baseline metabolic health, and stage of liver disease. Practically speaking, try to avoid daily drinking and binge drinking patterns. Remember that less is better, and any amount of alcohol carries some degree of risk. Always discuss with your doctor for advice tailored to your specific circumstances. And remember, reducing alcohol will also reduce your intake of excess calories, which may help facilitate weight loss if that is one of your goals. Lifestyle changes always come first. In some cases, though, medications can support that process, not by directly treating the liver, but by improving the metabolic drivers that cause fat to accumulate there. Clinical trials show that certain medications improve liver fat, rates of MASH resolution, and sometimes even fibrosis, alongside broader metabolic effects such as weight loss or improvement in blood sugar, for example. The most studied include GLP-based therapies like semaglutide and tirzepatide, which you may also know as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound. There are other medications that target the liver, such as resmetirom, and select older metabolic medications like pioglitazone. Not everyone needs medication, but for some people, they can be an evidence-based tool used thoughtfully alongside lifestyle changes to help move metabolic health and liver health in the right direction. One of the most common sources of confusion with fatty liver is how to track progress. Liver enzymes on blood work can improve or even normalize before liver fat has fully resolved. Changes on ultrasound or MRI can take months to show up, even when the underlying physiology is improving. Symptoms are also unreliable. Many people with fatty liver feel completely fine, and symptoms don't track well with disease severity or improvement. Because of that, no single test tells the whole story. What matters most is trend over time, not a single number or a single scan. When lifestyle changes are working, we usually see gradual improvement in metabolic markers, stabilization or improvement in liver enzymes, and/or imaging changes that follow later. Fatty liver improvement is typically slow and quiet, and that's normal. If we step back and look at everything together, the path forward with fatty liver is actually more straightforward than it first appears to be. The biggest driver of improvement is nutrition, not extreme dieting, not all or nothing thinking, but incremental and sustainable changes that you can maintain over time. Right behind that is exercise, especially resistance or weight training exercises. Building and preserving muscle improves how the body handles fuel and protects the liver. Aerobic or cardio exercise adds additional benefit by improving insulin sensitivity and overall metabolic health. Alcohol matters, but it needs to be framed thoughtfully. Minimizing daily use and binge patterns, and individualizing recommendations based on overall risk. And in some cases, medications can be appropriate, especially when lifestyle changes alone aren't enough or metabolic disease is more advanced. These aren't separate rules, and it's rarely one or the other. They work together. And the most important takeaway is this: fatty liver improves when your metabolic health improves. Not when you chase perfection, not when you follow rigid rules, but when you make gradual, sustainable lifestyle changes that you can stick with in the long term. Your liver is remarkably resilient. For most people, Fatty liver is something that can be improved or even reversed when the focus stays on long-term metabolic health and well-being. If you found this video helpful and would like to learn more about your cardiometabolic health, check out the Science MD YouTube and Instagram channels for more. I'm the Science MD, and this is the science behind your health. Thanks for joining, and see you next time.